All right, everybody, Jason Brown here. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, today I'm doing something a little bit different. I have a special guest who's joining us. I'll introduce him in a second. But today's topic is how to escape the nightmare of corporate burnout and learn to optimize your finances. Now, today I'm joined by Mr. Brad Long, who is a personal financial coach known as the Zero Debt Coach. And Brad is on a personal mission to help 10,000 5- and 6-figure corporate employees and entrepreneurs organize their finances, obliterate debt, and accelerate financial independence by starting and growing online businesses. So thanks so much, Brad, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be a really cool topic. I know we've exchanged a few emails back and forth about this topic, and I will say, I'm very intrigued by the topic, just because, you know, we've all kind of lived through this pandemic, and it's affected everybody differently. And we've seen how so much has changed in the office environment and the corporate world. So this is going to be a really interesting topic. So Brad, just first, let's just kind of talk, what exactly is corporate burnout? How do you define that? And how do we recognize it? How would I know if I'm burned out?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and I think that, you know, as soon as people hear that terminology, they pretty much know whether they are or not. And I think a lot of burnout, corporate or government or whatever job, has been kind of exacerbated by, you know, this whole pandemic thing, because people are working from home and they're juggling, you know, having to take care of the kids, or having to figure out that whole juggernaut. And so corporate burnout, for me, was the last 5 years of my corporate software sales career, where I had just gotten to a point where there wasn't any more creativity left in me, where I felt like literally waking up and going to do my job every day was the biggest drag of my life. I got so sick and tired of hearing, "Hey, Brad, did you update your forecast? Did you update your Salesforce notes? And you know, just the inherent sort of micromanagement that goes on in corporate America." And I think the bigger reason for my own personal burnout, and this may resonate with, you know, people in your audience that are experiencing burnout, was that I had really accomplished my why for going back into corporate America for the last 5 years that I was in it, which was, you know, so my wife and I could attain a certain level of income and build a certain level of nest egg in order for me to exit corporate America, which I knew wasn't really my calling. And more importantly, to be able to pivot to do what I do now, which is, you know, financial coaching, content creation, my YouTube channel, all that stuff. But yeah, people that hear that term burnout, you know, you're probably burned out if any of that ideation or messaging resonates with you.
Very, very, yeah, very good. Yeah, just know that, like you said, the you know, with everyone going on 2 years now with this global pandemic, and that's changed so many of our lives, especially with how we work. You know, the whole, you know, are you going to work remote? Are you going to work in the office? And then, you know, some people are doing hybrid. So there's so much, I guess, instability in how people are working now. I know that's affected me tremendously. You know, you're used to doing the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday in an office every day, which, you know, like you said yourself, might not be ideal. But then you have the pandemic, and then, you know, you're working from home. Then, you know, what are you supposed to do? So I think those environments or situations probably adding to a lot of this burnout.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen that in our own student population, in our audience population. And so a big part of, you know, I guess one of the next things I know that we're going to get to this is, you know, how do you escape that? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, perfect segue. That's the next
yeah,
question.
okay,
So,
yeah.
how do
So
we, Brad?
how do you?
How do we escape? How do we escape the corporate burnout? What do we do? Because I know so many people. I will tell you personally. For me, from previous jobs, you know, I felt trapped. Like I felt like you're suffocating, you're drowning. Like, what do I do? Like, you don't know what to do. Like, how do we do?
Right.
How do we escape?
Yeah, and it's a very relevant question, and there's not an easy answer to it in terms of the process of getting there. But I can enumerate the steps that we sort of lead our students through, which is to say, organizing their finances, optimizing their finances in terms of getting on a realistic, sustainable budget and tracking expenses, and then obliterating any sort of consumer debt that they have, any kind of non-mortgage debt they have, and getting themselves into a place of financial solvency so that they can start building a modicum of wealth that's going to allow them to escape, basically like I did. I mean, this is very much part of my story. So in 2007, I found myself in $174,000 worth of debt. That was mortgage debt and consumer debt. And that's when I discovered Dave Ramsey's material, and I went through Financial Peace University. I got some coaching, and in 2.5 years, I was able to pay off all that debt. And the process was kind of painstaking, like it is for a lot of people. And we know that even people with high 5 and 6 figure salaries still live paycheck to paycheck. So that's really kind of the first step, is getting organized, like sitting down and doing an honest inventory of your finances, like looking at everything that you owe, your bills, your debts, your expenses, figuring out your sources of income, which may be easy right now. It may be just your job. Then getting those organized into a solid zero-based monthly budget is what we teach, where you're getting to a place where you're giving every single unit of currency a name and a task to do inside of that budget, and then getting to a place where you've built enough solvency, you've got enough of an emergency fund, which we typically recommend at least $3,000 to $5,000 as the baby emergency fund for most people. And then you starting that debt elimination process, talking through the debt snowball or the debt avalanche. Sometimes there are some of our students have, ridiculous interest rates that have to be addressed sort of as an emergency before we can really do the debt snowball. And really just walking through that process of getting you out of consumer debt, to that place of solvency. And that could take a couple of years. It could take 3 years. It really just depends on what your situation is. And then, once you've done that, you can build that fully funded emergency fund of, we recommend 6 months to a year's worth of expenses, and then start looking at, all right, what level of financial independence do I need to build to leave my corporate career and then, look at doing something else. And for a lot of our student population, that is starting some kind of side hustle that could ultimately turn into an online business or a second career that they could pivot to within the next 2 to maybe 5 years.
Okay, yeah, that's what. Yeah, I was going to ask you. I think you might have just answered this question, but what exactly, when you say optimize your finances, what exactly does that mean? How would you define optimizing your finances?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really, optimization really kind of depends on where you are in the process. So if you are staring down the barrel of, a lot of consumer debt, optimizing your finances, the first step to that is getting them organized, like I was talking about a minute ago. Sitting down, we have an exercise we do with our students called the Everything I Owe exercise, where they sit down, we have them log into all of their accounts, go through all of their all their bank statements, all their mail-in statements, and they really just do, just a housekeeping exercise of, all right, what is it that's going out every month? And we get that on one centralized list so that we can then put it into the budget. Now, budgeting is probably, as for most people, is a 90 to 120 day process of learning how to do that. So that's the next level of optimization. Once you've kind of come clean about what your financial situation is, the next incarnation of optimization is getting everything into a budget, learning how to fail forward with that, because the first month is probably going to be, it's going to feel like a controlled demolition. The second month is probably going to be some wins coupled with some some challenges. And then by month 3 or month 4, it kind of all starts coming together. So, and inside of that optimization, you have to learn how to track expenses. You have to keep track of, what's coming in and what's going out, saving receipts, updating your budget on a daily or at least a weekly basis. So that's optimization. That's what optimization looks like on the front end of the process. On the back end of the process, once you've gotten out of your consumer debt and you've got that fully funded emergency fund, then optimization is, looking at elevating your savings rate, getting into an investing posture and an investing strategy. And then there's a whole optimization around that. So optimization really is, to kind of land the plane on that, is really dependent on which stage that you're in. And so we, sit down with our students, and, coach them into, whatever the next thing it is that they need to do to optimize their finances based on where they are.
Okay, that's a very good um, explanation and definition of that, Brad, and that sheds a lot of light on. So when I was listening to you talk, that the next question that popped in my head was, how long does this process take? And I'm sure it's a case by case, right? On everyone's situation in life is different, but it seems like the majority of us are your corporate burnout. The first thing you're gonna think of is like, okay, I'm burned out. I just need another job. Let me just get a different job
Right.
and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And usually
Yeah.
that's not the case, right, Brad? Usually it's just, you're just going to find yourself in the exact same, even if you get a job making more money, because that's what everyone, hey, I'm going to get a job over here. They're going to pay me more. And that's going on everywhere. That's the environment we're in right now with the pandemic, with the job industry. Everybody's, quitting. They're calling it the great resignation. Everyone's quitting to take other jobs or to take remote jobs or to take, higher paying jobs, or the market is, we've never seen anything like this before. It's very, very fascinating to watch. But I think, Brad, and you'll probably agree, is you can't just, if you're burned out, you can't just go take another job and all this will be solved. So how long will it take to kind of work through the process you just explained?
Yeah, great question. And like you said, it is definitely going to be determined very differently from individual to individual or family to family. And it really just depends on, how big is the pile of debt that you have, how big is sort of the shovel that you have in terms of your income, and how much you can devote to paying down that debt. And the honest answer is that, another or new or lateral or even higher paying corporate job may be the short term answer. You may have to stick it out inside of this burnout and figure out ways to cope until you get, your finances in the right status in order for you to pivot to another career, or to just, to take a break for a while. In my circumstance, I paid off that $174,000 in 2.5 years, and I was able to sort of exit that incarnation of my corporate career during that time. And I was a full-time musician after that, and so I was kind of languishing in that career for about another 5 or 6 years. And my wife and I had gotten to a place where we had built about $70,000 in net worth, positive net worth, but the needle wasn't moving. I was actually kind of at the end of my music career at that point. And so the next thing for us was, as much as I didn't want to go back into corporate America, I knew that with this strategy, our finances being organized, optimized, on a budget, we knew how to rein in lifestyle creep. All those things that we learned in the debt elimination process had really prepared us for some modicum of financial independence. So for a lot of people, that situation is going to be an unfortunate one. Of they're probably just going to have to stick it out a little bit longer until they can get their arms around their finances. Now, there may be some short-term solutions. Maybe you have a home that you can sell. Maybe you have some assets that you can get rid of that will, remedy your situation. But usually there is, 78% of the population lives paycheck to paycheck. That includes 5 and 6 figure corporate burnouts. I know I have a lot of colleagues and former colleagues in that space that, make a lot of money and they still live paycheck to paycheck. So what we have to do is first address where you are, and do that honest assessment of, the everything I owe exercise, and look at, all right, where am I and what do I need to do next? And the next thing, unfortunately might be a better paying job, or maybe it's stepping down in pay to get a little bit less stress. So it's a little bit individualized, but I think the overarching theme is just that, doing that sober, honest, sort of fearless inventory of where you are and what it is that you need to do next.
That's good. That's really good, Brad. Yeah, and so you kind of answered my next question a little bit. I was going to say, what is the very first thing that someone would need to do? Because I would think that if you're in this situation of corporate burnout, you're probably not thinking of, hey, I need to get my finances in order so I can put myself into the position of having more options, having more opportunity, having the ability to, like you said, step back or step away or do a pivot. Hey, I want to follow my true passion
Mm.
which would pay less, but I can't do that because I'm a slave to my debt. I'm a slave to my employer. I'm a slave to my job. So yeah, I guess the first step was, what did you call it? The everything I owe. Is that the first
Yeah,
step?
I would
Writing
say,
everything down.
yeah, I would say tactically that's the first step. I think even before that is just this sort of recognition of, okay, I'm burned out. I have to kind of give myself permission to think that way and feel that way, and that it's okay. You're not going to get probably a lot of positive feedback if you share that with your coworkers or with your boss. And so you have to sort of admit that to yourself. And if you're married, your spouse, and sort of work that out. Like, hey, I am really, really burned out. They probably already know anyway. I mean, the signs of this stuff are thumbprinted all over your life, if you are going through something like this. And so I think that's really the first part of coming clean is, all right, I know that I need to do something about this. And then so strategically, the next step would be to address the financial piece of that. All right, well, what do I want to do next? What do I want to do next? And then is that feasible? And then, after you sort of figure that piece of it out, then really the next step tactically is exactly what I was talking about before, is to sit down and do that, brutally honest inventory of what's coming in, what's going out, the everything I owe exercise, figuring out what your net worth is, and then figuring out, what does the overall picture look like? And then from there, you can kind of reverse engineer as to how long it's going to take. But I think the very, very first thing is just to admit that there's a problem, just like any problem is just to admit that it's there, and then, start to strategize and put a game plan in place. And then obviously the tactical pieces of that would be everything I owe, get on a budget if you're not on a budget. All those things are easier said than done. This is all personal development. I think I'm of the opinion that, budgeting is not really just a financial discipline. It's a personal discipline. It's a personal development thing that most of our students have to go through, because they have to learn how to say things like, I can't afford it, or I can't afford it right now, or how can I afford it, in the future. And so it's really just a combination of all those things. And there are a lot of great coaches like you, Jason, and other, free resources and courses that you can take out on the internet that will help you, define that stuff and figure out what to do next.
That's great, Brad. I really appreciate you sharing all this information. And like you said, you quoted the stat, 78% of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So it doesn't really seem to matter how much you make, because that was one of the biggest myths that I always had. I always thought, if I could just make more money, then I'll be fine. I just need to make more money. And the problem was that it was my mindset. It was behavior modification. I didn't know anything about financial literacy. I didn't know how to budget. I didn't know how to manage my money. So that was the problem. The problem wasn't, the amount of money I was making. And, the famous quote is, I love to share this one, is money doesn't solve money problems. And when you sit back and think about that, it is so true. It doesn't matter. Like you were just talking about the 5 and 6 figure, individuals that you work with that are making 5 and 6 figure salaries, and they're living paycheck to paycheck. And then someone, like myself, when I first got out of college and I was making $23,000 a year, and I would listen to all these people call into Dave Ramsey's show. You mentioned Ramsey. People would call into Ramsey's show and say, hey, I make $150,000 a year and I have $300,000 of consumer credit. And I would be sitting there like, how is this possible? Like, if I made $150,000 a year, I would be rich. I would have no debt. But I didn't understand at the time, I was 23 years old or what. I didn't understand that, that in America, it seems like the more money people make, the more debt they're in, the more they spend. Like you said, lifestyle creep. So that's really the biggest thing that you said to me that resonated with me is awareness. You have to create that awareness of the situation that you're in, and then move forward from there. Well, Brad, thanks so much for this, man. This has been super helpful for me, just for me to learn. And I know a lot of people are probably in this situation for a variety of reasons. So share with, if anyone wants to connect with you and maybe, do some coaching with you or training with you, let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, the easiest place to find me is my website, which is ZeroDebtCoach.com. That's zero spelled out, ZERO, debtcoach.com. And you can click on the link in the upper right hand corner to all of our free guides. My cornerstone piece of content there is the 8 Steps to Erase Debt, which is the foundations of financial independence. Addressing a lot of the things that we talked about. And I've got over 24 different types of free guides and resources. The other place that I hang out a lot is my YouTube channel. It's Brad Long, Zero Debt Coach. You can find me there as well. And yeah, I guess the biggest message is that if you are a corporate burnout and you are suffering financially and psychologically and career wise, don't sit and suffer in silence. There are plenty of us out here that are willing to help you and want to help you, sort of troubleshoot your situation and take that very next step, whatever that step may be.
Awesome, Brad. Thanks for sharing all that. And we'll link all that in the description below if you guys want to connect with Brad and learn more about how he can possibly help you. Want to check out some of his YouTube videos. He has a lot of helpful content on his YouTube channel as well. So Brad Long, Zero Debt Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. And until next time, this is Jason Brown saying, thanks for watching. And remember my favorite saying, it's not the amount of money you make, but the margin that matters the most. See you next time.